Welcome to Mythic Realms Unveiled, where we dive into the hidden truths of ancient myths and the forgotten roots of human spirituality. In this episode, we reveal the secrets you were never taught, mystical realms, divine archetypes, and spiritual pathways buried beneath centuries of dogma and distortion. From Atlantis to the astral plane, Hermes to hidden gods, prepare to journey beyond the veil of ordinary belief. These are the stories that shaped our souls, lost, suppressed, and now rediscovered. Stay tuned as we unlock the powerful spiritual knowledge encoded in mythology that still echoes through our consciousness today. Throughout history, myths have been passed down as grand tales of gods, monsters, and heroes. Colorful stories often dismissed as primitive or fictional. But beneath their fantastical surface lies a rich tapestry of hidden spiritual wisdom, encoded in symbols, metaphors, and archetypes. The ancients didn't just tell stories to entertain. They transmitted secret knowledge about the nature of reality, consciousness, and the divine. In this essay, we unveil the mythic realms not as fictional landscapes, but as sacred maps of the soul. These myths, whether from Egypt, Greece, Mesopotamia, India, or the Norse, hold keys to forgotten forms of spirituality, inner transformation, and cosmic understanding that modern systems have often ignored or obscured. This is the hidden heritage of humanity's spiritual evolution. The secrets of spirituality you were never taught. The purpose of myth, more than storytelling. At its core, myth is the language of the soul. Mythic stories functioned in ancient societies as spiritual frameworks, tools for teaching initiates about the divine order, the cosmos, human nature, and the journey of the soul. The term myth comes from the Greek word mythos, which originally meant word or story, but also speech with power. Where modern religions often present doctrine and dogma, myths offered gnosis, personal, intuitive knowledge of the sacred. They were never meant to be literal. Instead, they were symbolic dramas played out to awaken the deeper layers of human consciousness. When we learn to interpret these stories symbolically rather than literally, we open ourselves to profound insights about life, death, and transformation. The lost realms of spiritual geography. Many ancient mythologies spoke of realms beyond the physical world, places where gods dwelled, souls journeyed, and truths were revealed. 1. The underworld. Transformation through descent. In Egyptian, Greek, and Mesopotamian traditions, the underworld wasn't merely a place of death. It was a symbolic realm of transformation. In the Greek myth of Persephone, her descent into Hades and return to the surface mirrors the spiritual cycle of inner descent and rebirth. The Egyptian duets served a similar role. Initiates and deceased souls journeyed through it to face trials, shed illusions, and emerge spiritually resurrected. These myths teach us that spiritual growth often requires entering our own darkness, confronting our inner demons, and emerging renewed. 2. The heavens, realms of divine consciousness. Realms like Mount Olympus, Greek, Asgard, Norse, or Svarga, Vedic, were not just homes of the gods, they were higher planes of consciousness. In many spiritual traditions, these realms represent elevated states of being, where wisdom, clarity, and unity prevail. The path to these realms was symbolic of the soul's ascent toward divine awareness. Ancient initiates, mystics, shamans, or sages sought to experience these realms in altered states through rituals, meditation, or sacred plants, entering states that modern psychology now parallels with expanded consciousness. 3. The middle world, Earth as sacred theater. In many mythologies, the earth itself is a sacred realm, a middle world where the divine and the mortal meet. Myths of sacred mountains, holy rivers, and cosmic trees, like Yggdrasil in Norse lore or the Tree of Life in Kabbalah, reveal that ancient people saw Earth not as a profane world to escape, but as a place where the spiritual journey is lived and realized. Archetypes and hidden spiritual codes. Myths use archetypes, universal figures like the hero, the wise old man, the mother goddess, the trickster, as vehicles for conveying spiritual lessons. These archetypes mirror aspects of the human psyche and stages of inner transformation. 1. The hero's journey as spiritual initiation. Joseph Campbell's concept of the monomyth, the hero's journey, maps remarkably onto spiritual initiation. The hero leaves the ordinary world, faces trials, gains new knowledge, and returns transformed. Think of Odysseus, Gilgamesh, or even Jesus. Their stories follow this pattern. Spiritually, this journey mirrors the soul's path toward enlightenment. The dragons and monsters are our fears and ego attachments. The magical helpers are spiritual guides or inner intuitions. The treasure is awakening, gnosis, or divine union. 2. The divine feminine, lost wisdom of balance. Many ancient myths centered goddesses, Isis, Inanna, Kali, Sophia, as embodiments of wisdom, intuition, and transformation. Their suppression in later patriarchal systems mirrored a loss of feminine spiritual values, nurturing, cycles, mystery, and embodiment. Myths of the divine feminine offer a holistic view of spirituality that embraces both light and shadow, life and death, creation and destruction. They point toward balance and inner integration, a much-needed correction to overly masculine, dogmatic religious frameworks. 3. The trickster, sacred disruption. Figures like Hermes, Loki, and Coyote represent the trickster archetype, chaotic, unpredictable, yet spiritually potent. Tricksters dismantle illusions and challenge rigid systems, forcing transformation through disruption. In a deeper sense, they embody divine paradox, reminding us that true wisdom often comes through confusion and laughter. The mystery schools and hidden teachings. In the ancient world, knowledge of the mythic realms and spiritual truths wasn't freely available to all. It was guarded in mystery schools, sacred institutions like the Eleusinian mysteries in Greece, the Egyptian temples of Hermopolis, or the Vedic ashrams of India. These schools taught initiates how to interpret myths symbolically, align with cosmic principles, and access divine realms. They used rituals, symbols, mantras, astrology, and sacred geometry, not as superstition, but as spiritual technologies to awaken the inner self. Hermes Trismegistus, a mythic fusion of Thoth and Mercury, symbolized this secret wisdom. The Hermetic teachings speak of as above, so below, expressing the interconnectedness of all levels of reality. These teachings emphasized inner transformation, not external salvation. Why these teachings were forgotten. So why weren't you taught these spiritual secrets? Over time, literalist interpretations, organized religion, colonization, and political power structures suppressed the esoteric traditions. Myth was either sanitized or demonized. Sacred feminine figures were reduced to sinners or saints. Shamanic and mystic traditions were labeled heresy or superstition. Modern education further stripped myth of its spiritual dimension, reducing it to primitive storytelling. But now, in a time of spiritual reawakening, more people are turning back to these ancient tales, not as relics, but as roadmaps. Modern relevance. Why this matters today. The crises we face today, spiritual emptiness, ecological collapse, identity fragmentation, stem in part from a disconnection from mythic consciousness. Myths remind us that we are part of a greater whole, that the cosmos is alive, that life is meaningful, and that we are souls on a sacred journey. Reclaiming the mythic realms is not about returning to old religions. It's about reviving the inner spiritual compass they offered. It's about seeing life not as random or mechanical, but as a story in which you are the co-creator. Myth as a tool for inner work. Interpreting myths isn't just intellectual, it's transformational. Here's how you can work with myth for your own spiritual growth. Identify the mythic archetypes in your life. Who are your inner heroes, mentors, tricksters, or monsters? Reflect on your current place in the hero's journey. Are you answering the call? Facing the ordeal? Returning with wisdom? Engage with myth through journaling, art, or ritual. Let the symbols speak through intuition, not analysis alone. Reconnect with nature as sacred. Mythic consciousness sees the world as alive with spirit, returning to the sacred story. In the end, Mythic Realms Unveiled is an invitation, not to believe in fairy tales, but to awaken the sacred within. The myths you were never taught aren't just stories. They're encrypted codes for spiritual evolution. They remind you that you are more than flesh and bone. You are a soul in the great cosmic story, walking a path that heroes, gods, and mystics have walked before you. As we reawaken to these timeless truths, we don't merely learn ancient wisdom. We remember what we always knew deep within. Myth is not the opposite of truth. It is the soul's truth, whispered through symbols, dreams, and stories. So dare to descend, to rise, to wander the realms beyond the veil. The myths are calling, and they were never just tales. They are mirrors of who we truly are. The underworld, a place of shadows, silence, and mystery. Often feared and misunderstood, this mythological realm has haunted the human imagination for millennia. But what if the underworld was never meant to be a place of eternal torment? What if it symbolized something deeper, something essential for spiritual awakening? Across cultures and centuries, myths about the underworld have served as allegories for inner transformation, spiritual trials, and the rebirth of the self. Whether it's the Greek Hades, the Egyptian Duat, the Mesopotamian Irkalla, or the Norse Hel, these shadowy domains represent not just death, but the passage through the unknown toward growth and renewal. This essay explores the underworld not as a literal afterlife, but as a symbolic space where transformation occurs, a realm we all must pass through when we face suffering, loss, change, or profound self-discovery. Welcome to the journey of descent, the spiritual process that reshapes the soul through darkness. Understanding the underworld across cultures. The concept of the underworld is universal. Ancient mythologies across the globe describe realms beneath the surface world, inhabited by spirits, gods, and guardians. These places often share common features: a difficult entrance, fearsome guardians, obstacles or trials, and finally, the possibility of return or rebirth. 1. Greek Hades. In Greek mythology, the underworld, ruled by the god Hades, was the destination of souls after death. But it was not synonymous with punishment. Hades was divided into various regions, including the Elysian Fields, a paradise for the virtuous, Tartarus, a place of suffering, and the Asphodel Meadows, a neutral zone for ordinary souls. Myths like that of Persephone, abducted into Hades and returning cyclically, highlight the theme of descent and return. Persephone's time in the underworld symbolizes not only seasonal cycles, but also the soul's journey through shadow into light. 2. Egyptian Duat. In ancient Egypt, the Duat was the complex underworld that souls navigated after death. Governed by Osiris, the Duat was filled with rivers, gates, monsters, and magical trials. The soul's passage through the Duat symbolized the path of purification. The famous weighing of the heart ceremony determined whether the soul was worthy of eternal life. If one's heart was lighter than the feather of Ma'at, truth and balance, they achieved immortality. This wasn't just a belief about the afterlife. It reflected the spiritual principle that inner balance and truth lead to transformation. 3. Mesopotamian Irkalla. In Sumerian and Akkadian mythology, Irkalla was the land of no return, a dusty, joyless place where souls resided after death. In the myth of Inanna's descent, the goddess of love and war journeys into Irkalla, is stripped of her power, killed, and then resurrected. This myth is a powerful spiritual allegory. Descent strips us of ego, pride, and illusions, and through surrender, we are reborn into higher consciousness. 4. Norse Hell. Hell, ruled by the goddess of the same name, was the Norse underworld. It was not a place of fire and brimstone, but a cold and shadowy land where most souls went after death, not as punishment, but as a natural destination. Norse myth emphasizes that courage, honor, and how one faced death mattered more than moral judgment. Hell was part of the great cosmic structure, Yggdrasil, the world tree, another symbol showing how the underworld is rooted in the totality of existence. The descent, a universal spiritual pattern. In myth, the journey to the underworld is not reserved for the dead. Heroes, gods, and shamans enter it while alive. Why? Because the descent is symbolic of a spiritual initiation. It marks the death of the old self and the birth of something new. 1. The hero's descent. Many mythical heroes descend into the underworld. Orpheus enters Hades to rescue Eurydice. Odysseus visits the land of the dead to seek wisdom. Aeneas descends to meet his father and learn his destiny. Dante, in the Divine Comedy, journeys through hell on the path to paradise. Each descent is symbolic. These figures face darkness, encounter truth, and emerge transformed. The underworld functions as the testing ground of the soul. 2. The goddess descent, Inanna and Persephone. Whereas male figures often enter the underworld in search of knowledge, female figures like Inanna and Persephone embody the underworld's rhythms of death and rebirth. Inanna's descent requires her to pass through 7 gates, removing a piece of clothing or jewelry at each. She is symbolically stripped of ego, power, and identity. Only through complete surrender does she die, and only through death is she resurrected. These myths mirror psychological and spiritual truth. We must be willing to lose everything we think we are to become what we truly are. The underworld as a psychological metaphor. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist, recognized myths as expressions of deep psychological truths. He viewed the underworld as symbolic of the unconscious mind, the hidden, repressed, and shadowy parts of the self. To Jung, descending into the underworld meant confronting the shadow, the denied aspects of ourselves. Only by facing our fears, desires, and wounds can we achieve individuation, the process of becoming a whole and integrated person. The underworld, then, is not out there. It is within us. Shadow work, the modern underworld journey. In modern spirituality, the process of engaging with one's shadow, what's known as shadow work, is essentially a descent into the underworld. This inner journey involves facing inner wounds, grief, trauma, guilt, fear, unmasking the ego, letting go of the roles we play and the identities we cling to, embracing truth, seeing ourselves clearly without distortion. Shadow work isn't comfortable. It often involves depression, existential crisis, or identity collapse. But it is profoundly necessary. Only by descending into our inner darkness can we reclaim lost parts of ourselves and awaken deeper compassion, wisdom, and authenticity. The gifts of the underworld. While frightening, the underworld always offers transformation. Those who descend and return bring back wisdom, power, and healing. 1. Self-knowledge. In the darkness, we see what the light often blinds us to, our patterns, our wounds, our true desires. The underworld confronts us with the truth of who we are. 2. Rebirth. In many traditions, spiritual growth follows a cycle of death and rebirth. The ego must die so the soul can be reborn. This is seen in initiation rites, baptism, and myths alike. After descending, the soul returns, changed and awakened. 3. Wisdom and compassion. Having faced suffering, those who return from the underworld often become healers, teachers, or guides. Like the wounded healer archetype such as Chiron, their pain becomes the source of their power to help others. The underworld in dreams and symbols. Even today, the underworld appears in our dreams, art, and visions. Common underworld motifs include dark tunnels or caves, entrances to hidden truth, stairs or ladders going downward, descent into the subconscious, monsters or guardians, fears or emotional blocks to be faced, fire, fog, or shadows, symbolic of transformation or obscured truth. These symbols appear when we're undergoing change, loss, or emotional healing. They invite us inward. The modern world's fear of descent. Contemporary society often avoids the underworld. We fear sadness, deny death, suppress the shadow, and chase constant positivity. Yet, without descent, no genuine transformation is possible. We live in a culture of avoidance. But the mythic path says, enter the darkness willingly. Do not flee the pain. Walk through it. That is how the soul grows. Spiritual practices for descent. To consciously engage in the underworld journey, many spiritual paths offer tools. Meditation and silence, allowing hidden truths to surface. Journaling, exploring inner landscapes with honesty. Ritual and ceremony, marking symbolic death and rebirth. Therapy and dream work, understanding unconscious material. Pilgrimage or solitude, stepping outside of routine to encounter the self. Spiritual teachers remind us that light without shadow is incomplete. It is by embracing both that we find truth. Descent as a sacred journey. The underworld is not a curse. It is a rite of passage. Every loss, every breakdown, every dark night of the soul is an invitation to go deeper, not to destroy you, but to transform you. The myths of descent remind us that transformation is not found in comfort, but in courage, in facing the unknown, in shedding old skins, in letting go of who we were to become who we must be. Whether through ancient stories or modern healing, the message remains. Enter the underworld, face the shadow, and rise again reborn. Thanks for joining us on this journey through the mythic realms, Unveiled. If today's revelation sparked something deep within you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a dive into the hidden truths of ancient wisdom and spiritual secrets. Share your thoughts in the comments. What myth or mystery do you want us to explore next? Remember, the ancient world still whispers through symbols, stories, and stars. Until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, and never stop exploring the mysteries that were never meant to be forgotten. The truth is closer than you think.